maybe even more than people with firearms. There's one case, Aaron Hedges.
And the bow hunter stories are the strangest stories in the books. I can honestly say that for some reason, either they're not found or they're found under conditions that are just totally bizarre. Aaron's case is one of the most bizarre. And a super experienced hunter, and this isn't a joke. He was hunting in the Crazy Mountains. That's the name of them, in Montana. And the location was, he was about 20 miles north of Billings. He was with 3 friends, and they took the Cottonwood Lake Trailhead into the Crazies. And all 3 in the group were carrying radios to communicate. So somehow during the day, this has happened about September 7th of 2014, he got separated somehow. And this is another element that I talk about in the books, is somehow, and it's unexplained how, and nobody really knows how, but they get separated. The group gets separated. Well, he gets on the radio, and he says that he missed the trail back to their camp, and he was going to go onto a place called Sunlight Lake. And he knew this location really well because there was a cabin there from the previous year that he had played, sleeping bags, etc. He was going to grab some of those supplies and meet him back to camp that night. Well, the following morning, he still hadn't made it back to camp, but his friends were well adjusted to the outdoors. They didn't worry. Figured he was going to spend the night there, hunt for some elk and meet him the next day. He had the supplies, made his farm, his bow, knew the area pretty well. The pair of friends that day killed an elk. They brought it back to the camp, and when Aaron didn't arrive that Monday night, the friends started to and the friends that night stayed in position. They wake up and start looking for Aaron. Well, that night they didn't find him, and they got real concerned, and they left and started to look for assistance. So on Wednesday, they made it out of the mountains. They called Aaron's wife, reported him as missing, and they called the sheriff. Now, the press did state that the delay in reporting could have played a part in the search. Well, the men were hunting on the western side of the Crazies in Park County. This is important because the Crazies cover several different counties. So they were on the western side. On the eastern side of the mountains is Sweetgrass County. Well, the initial report stated that Aaron was lost on the western side of the mountains, and Park County took control of the search. And by the time Park County started the search, the snow had started to fall, and there were soon snow on the ground as the search party started to go into the field. So there was a 3-day delay in getting Aaron reported missing, and then a 2-day delay in getting people into the field to search. Now, 5 days of inclement weather, chances are you're probably dead. And unless you're super well situated in the mountains and have the clothing and perseverance to survive. Well, the Park County Sheriff soon realized that Aaron could possibly have been on the border with Sweetgrass County, so he called for their assistance. There's a September 28th article in the Livingston Enterprise that stated 2 weeks earlier. Now, this appears on the 7th. This article's on the 28th. So they're saying on about the 14th, a week after Aaron disappears, searchers are in the field, and they found a pair of boots and a camelback. And both of them were identified as belonging to Aaron. Now, one search and rescue worker makes a statement in the article that barefoot, you're not going to go and travel far. So we searched a quarter-mile radius, and we found nothing. So this was next to a creek. Search and rescue finds his 2 boots and a camelback. Now there's 2 feet of snow on the ground. You're the search and rescue people. You know Aaron's not going far, if he went anywhere. So they brought 20 different canine teams into that area to see if they could pick up a scent. They found nothing. They brought in 7 questioning teams. They found nothing. They looked for tracks through the area. They found nothing. 50 ground searchers found nothing. Now, they brought in a helicopter with forward-looking infrared, and they found nothing. If you die one day, you're going to miss you for a couple days. The National Guard flew a series of sorties. They found nothing. 15 days after the search started, they found nothing and it was terminated. Now, 9 months later, the case takes an unusual turn to say the least. Two men were working on repairing a fence in Grass County. One man was repairing the fence, and his dad was just kind of walking around keeping him company, visiting. Well, his dad finds a bow, a backpack, and an orange vest. His dad said, he's looking at this stuff, and he's thinking, he's going to find a body because it must have been a bear that killed someone right here. And they looked around, they didn't find anything other than just the 6 witnesses. Well, the men called the sheriff, and it wasn't before long that the sheriff ID'd the property as Aaron. Now, here's where almost beyond understanding. The location where the vest and the backpack were found was 15 approximately air miles from point to point from where Aaron was found. Now, the items were found 2 miles from the ranch house. They searched the area intensively where they found his backpack and they found nothing.
There's no way he walked 15 miles without boots on.
Get you to the part where they interviewed the lieutenant. So, remember what the SAR worker said? He said, well, Aaron couldn't travel far from the point he found the boots.
I'll tell you what, Dave, I have to interrupt you. I'm sorry. Music is telling us I need to take a break. This story is really getting good here. The story of Aaron Hedges, 38 years old, disappears in the crazy mountains. But we'll be right back with more of this right after this on Coast to Coast AM. All right, Dave Politis. Aaron Hedges is the hunter who disappears. His boots are found in one place, his vest and backpack a long way away. What's the deal on that?
So, the locations were all of these found, they're identifiable. And I looked on a geological survey map, and it looks like it's just over 13 air miles point to point. One article said it was 15. I got it at 13. Now, if you talk about any kind of survival record, those rugged mountains, it's never point to point. It's just double, sometimes triple, because you're going up, down, sideways. And in this instance, in the middle of winter, chances are that you're not going to be crossing the river. It's a longer trip. Well, they interviewed a corporal named Greg Todd, who's the head of the Sweetgrass County Search and Rescue, and they asked him, with what you have in front of you, what you thought might have happened. And the quote he gave was, that's a $1 million question. That's all he was saying. Well, then they went to Lieutenant Alan Ronenberg of the Sweetgrass County Sheriff's Department, and in the Montana Pioneer Press of October 3rd, 2015, they asked him what he thought might have happened. And I quote him, he said, everything from he got turned around and got off the trail, got caught in the storm, passed away off the trail from hypothermia, to he's in Mexico somewhere, to UFOs got him. There's literally a full list. Essentially, damn point.
In that same section of your book, California and the Central Coast, you've got another just a heartbreaking case about a girl named Anna Christian Waters, Half Moon Bay.
Yeah, and that's a case that I grew up in a suburb of San Jose. This happened about 30 miles from my house. And this one is a heartbreaking one to say the least, but it fits the profile to a T. And Anna was living in an area just outside of Half Moon Bay, in a very rural area at the time. Now, there's multi-million-dollar homes in this area. There's some rock stars who live there, and a lot of Silicon Valley very wealthy people live in this one little valley. But Anna and her mom lived in this kind of rundown area at the time. It's beautiful. I would have lived there. And she went to school, and her mom was an assistant in her class. Her father was a physician that lived in San Francisco but was separated from his mom. This area is about 15, 20 miles south of an area called Devil's Slide, famous area between Half Moon Bay and San Francisco. This actually occurred on a street called Carissima Creek Road in San Mateo County, California. Anna came home from school, and there was a lot of weird things that happened this day in this little valley. One thing that made the newspapers was that a chicken went crazy and attacked a worker in the area, and the worker had to kill it. Another story was that a woman was exercising her horse just up the street from where Anna disappeared, and she heard strange noises in a bush right across from where she was. Again, she never saw anything, but it was just strange. Anna comes home from school, goes into the backyard. There's a creek flowing through her backyard. She's playing in the backyard for a few minutes. She comes in, takes off her red raincoat, goes back outside. Her mom said all of a sudden things went really quiet. She knew something was wrong. She went outside, she couldn't find Anna. And there's a big search, didn't find anything. Sheriff shows up, big search, doesn't find anything. The water level in this creek is up a little bit higher than normal because of winter rain. And initially people thought that Anna went into the creek and maybe flowed downstream and drowned. Well, give it to the San Mateo County Sheriffs. They pulled out all the stops, and there were big blockages in the creek from wood and fallen timber and things. And they made the determination there's no way she could have gotten more than a half a mile, even if she was deceased floating in that creek. And there's no way she could have made it to the ocean, which was miles away. But as they brought in search and rescue dogs, the dogs go into the backyard and start to follow a scent upstream, which makes no sense because there's a gate in that area where Anna couldn't get past. To make a very long story short, they looked for this girl for days, months, years. It's still an open case. They never found her. Again, her mom wrote a great book about searching. It's called Searching for Anna. And the details in it are just heart-wrenching, but they fit this to the T, where everyone's scratching for some answer, but there's nothing to be found, and this girl should have been found because there was no place to go.
Let's talk about some of the new patterns that you wanted to discuss tonight. You sort of have an outline in mind that you shared with me. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I know I'm smart enough to get out of the way. So I just want you to go ahead and explain the patterns that you've seen and why our audience should know about them.
So sometimes when I write about a case, I've got a gut feeling that it's going to fit. So I'll exert a lot of effort to understand it and get more documents. And last year, I wrote about this incident, and nobody in radio and all the 100-plus interviews I've done has ever seen on this, and I think it's important to talk about. A man named Jonathan Miles Robinson, who was 6'5" inches tall, 23 years old. He was from Great Britain. And every Christmas, he and his family went to Wengen for their holiday. And Wengen sits at the bottom of Mount Eiger in Switzerland. The elevation of this little city is only like 4,000 feet. There's 1,300 year-round residents, about 5,000 summer residents. And in the wintertime, it swells to 10,000 because of the skiing. And for some reason, in the early 1900s, British people migrated there and set up ski clubs there. So it's a big hub for tourists from Great Britain. And this little community in the wintertime is only accessed one way, and that's by a rack railway system from a city called Lauterburg. And after midnight, this rack railway doesn't operate, and there is no other way in and out, and I guess they'd have to call for helicopters back in those situations. You can't walk out of there, and there are no cars in this little tiny city with golf carts. Well, on December 21st, 2009, Miles was with his family at the Eiger Hotel, having dinner and drinking. They were having fun, and they went to this place called the Bar. And they were playing pool, more drinking, and at about 2 in the morning, everybody decided to split up. And one of the family friends was a female, and Miles said, "Hey, I'll just walk her down the street here to her hotel." And there was CCTV cameras on the street that picked me and her walking to the hotel. He went in at about 2:20 in the morning, and she said that he left the hotel at 2:50 in the morning. And one camera caught him leaving that hotel where she was at about 2:51. And it was no more than 200 yards from that hotel to his hotel. And he didn't. And the parents stated adamantly this was 100% out of his character. He was a college grad. He had a finance degree. He had a great job in London, and his mom was a senior official in the British Skiing Association, and she really rallied a lot of support to help find her son. And they went as much as going door to door in this little city asking people if they could search their house. Well, the police brought in canines, and they never found a trackable scent anywhere. And the police also went door to door. And then the family on the 28th of December decided, we're not getting anywhere with this. So they brought in a special team of searchers that they hired. And just after that, they were in a town. There was a town outside of Lauterbrunnen. And the searchers were looking streets, alleyways, and at about in the mid-afternoon hour, they saw something at the bottom of the mountain. They had a couple guys go down, and they went down, and they found his body dead. Now, what that in and of itself, but one thing I write about in my cases is that when people are found under unusual profiled cases that I write about, they're missing clothing, but more times than not, they're missing shoes. And this was the middle of the winter when Miles disappeared, and he's found at the bottom of the cliff. It's 6:00 at the time of the morning when he disappeared, and he's missing shoes. And his cell phone stopped sending a signal at 5 a.m. on the morning he disappeared. At 3:26 in the morning, there was a message sent from his phone the first thing he was directly in it. Now, when you talk to people who are really good with cell phones, sometimes if you drop your phone, it'll either automatically dial 911 or it'll dial the first number in your directory. And that's what happened on this case. So more than likely, at 2:50 a.m., no, I'm sorry, 3:26 a.m., he went off that cliff and died. Now, everybody understands, there is no way to get from Wengen to Lauterbrunnen in the middle of the morning like that. And he disappeared. Now, the coroner ruled an open verdict, meaning he's not going to rule out foul play. He did say that Miles was missing his shoes and socks. His blood alcohol level was 0.20, twice over almost 2 times the legal limit of driving. But all of the cameras that showed him when he was leaving the various hotels, he wasn't staggering, he was walking completely normally. And it showed that the autopsy showed he had many, many broken bones. And there was also some strange things regarding hypothermia and paranoia. And an author, I won't name him, but he has this saying, local reports for local consumption. And what they wanted to do with this is just quell the community. And when you read the online articles about this, their family says several times, can somebody please tell me how my son got from point to point in the middle of the night? Why is everybody ignoring this? And on its face, that is a strange case.
He was pretty messed up. There was an autopsy or 2 autopsies or something like that. I mean, he was smashed, like as if somebody picked him up. And this is just me surmising here, but it's almost like he was picked up and then dropped.
It does sound like that. And there's
broken bones, right?
I'm sorry?
Broken bones, right?
Bones, yeah. In fact, I think there was multiple serious breaks. The final cause of death, I think they were going to try to levy it to a fractured skull, but there was never any mention of cerebral damage other than bones to his legs, etc. But so I wrote about that, and then son of a gun. Earlier this year, a man named Kieran Flux, 18-year-old guy from the Isle of Wight, another UK Brit. He was with his family at a place called Val d'Isère, France. It's right near the Italian border. He was an experienced snowboarder. He attended college at the Isle of Wight. Both of these guys, so Miles was a college grad, and Flux was in college. And he arrived with his dad and other family members, and they were staying in a chalet on January 4th, 2006. On the 5th, he went snowboarding with his family, and then afterwards went out drinking in Valdez. And on the 6th, at 1:30 in the morning, he was walking out of a bar in town. Well, the morning of the 6th, his parents wake up. He's not in the house. They look around. They call his cell. Nothing. He's reported as a missing person. Police searched the town. Family searched the town, the mountain area. Nothing found on the 6th. On the 7th, they put a helicopter up, and they find his body 2 miles away, northwest of town, in what this is their wording, in a gorge. And in the Telegraph newspaper on the 8th, it says he's understood that this is one of the spots that found that an isolated spot in the Gorges de la Dalle, between La Dalle area of the resort and Chevreau Lake. Some articles state that among the questions police investigators were looking at was how the teenager ended up in such a remote spot, and they claimed he froze to death. And they said, this is interesting, the body was frozen solid. And they said that he fell at least 70 feet. Articles state this is the key part, articles state he was wearing a pair of jeans, t-shirt, a jumper, and a jacket. There was never any mention if he was or wasn't wearing shoes. Police stated they were still investigating the case, and there was no release at this time by the cause of death. But they're going to surmise it to be probably hypothermia. No autopsy reports have been released at this time.
Dave, I want to come back to this. Obviously, we need to take a break here, but I want you to draw the comparisons between that one and the first case you said, and I think you got one after that. Man, we're getting into some good stuff here now on Coast to Coast AM. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Dave Politis, you mentioned some of the details about this guy, Kieran Flux, and the similarities to Jonathan Miles Robinson. What jumps out at you there as being a little bit too eerie for comfort?
So off the top, they're both smart young men, either in college or attending college. Obviously pretty well to do because they're at a nice resort with family. Both of them had been drinking alcohol. Both of them were alone. Both at a ski resort in Europe. Both guys were extremely athletic. No witnesses to what happened. And there was no explanation from anyone about how they could arrive at where they were eventually found. And both were found in a very isolated area. No explanation.
I remember when you started the research, you were a little bit wary about cases where people disappear and there's buildings and a lot of other folks around. You didn't want to jump into urban disappearances because of so many other complicated factors. Could these guys have just been, they got into a beef with somebody an argument who held them at gunpoint, threw them in a car, and then dumped them somewhere?
Sure. If that was in New York City, I could buy into it. But the problem with Miles is there was no way to get point to point. And it's not easy getting off that mountain undetected because the only way you can get to and from it is off this little rail car line. And everyone sees you leaving. You're under CCTV. They knew he hadn't left. No other way during the middle of winter. During the summer, there's a trail that goes from town to town, and I was reading that it takes anywhere from 4 to 6 hours to make that trip during the summer. During the winter, it's an impossible trek. So, you got to use logic and common sense here. The man didn't walk point to point, and it happened in the middle of the night, so your guess is as good as mine how he got there.
No way a helicopter came in because somebody would have heard it. And then you say there's another one that jumped out at you that's not all that dissimilar.
So we actually have a YouTube page where we produced a few videos, one of them, and it involves a physician named Dr. James McGrogan, 39 years old. He went missing on March 14, 2014 in Vail, Colorado. And for the people that have been to Vail before, one side of the freeway is the ski resort. When you look at the other side of the freeway, there's a mountain, very steep, that has a trail that goes up to a little cabin up top. And he went with a couple of other physicians, into the area in the middle of winter, and they were going to backpack into this area and spend the night. Well, he was originally from Wisconsin, moved to Mishawaka, Indiana, to the St. Joseph Regional Medical Center, where he was an emergency doctor. This guy is probably has a different profile than most physicians because he really, really wanted to be a physician. And the first couple times he couldn't get into medical school, third time he got in. And not only was he a smart guy, but he was also a marathon runner, ultra determined in whatever he did. Now, one of the things that I talk about in my last couple of books is a profile point of runners. And there's been a lot of people, marathon runners, long-distance runners, that have disappeared under unusual circumstances. And McGrogan fit in my book under two profiles, one being super smart physician and the other being a marathon runner. Well, he left with other physicians from Indiana for a boys' weekend up on the trail. They went into Denver and he rented what's called a snowboard from this shop in downtown Denver. I actually went out and I interviewed the guys that rented it. And then they went up to Vail, spent the night, got up early the next morning, and there's a trail that's very compacted snow that you make your way up the hillside to this one location they were headed. McGrogan was ultra prepared. He didn't take any chances. This guy had an avalanche beacon, he had GPS, he had a cell phone with extra batteries, tent, food. He had everything you could imagine to survive anything. Well, as they were going up this trail, it's steep. You're at about 9,000 feet when you start. The other physicians were getting tired. McGrogan was basically saying, I'm going to get the next stop. I'm just going to keep going. So he keeps hiking. Well, the guys get to the next stop. He's not there. And they said, well, maybe he's just kept going. Maybe he's going to meet him at Iceman Hut and their location that they were headed. And by 5 o'clock that night, they get to the hut, and everyone says, no, nobody ever came up here. Nobody ever got here. Nobody's seen anyone. So one of the physicians goes back down, gets a hold of the police, and that's what started the search effort. Well, right away, the search and rescue really put forth a huge effort on this. They put 2 helicopters into the sky. There were over 1,000 search and rescue hours spent on the trail. They brought canines on the trail. Every trail that left the snow trail that they were on was tracked to the end of where it was. They found nothing. And if you left this main trail and you decided to cross country, say, there wasn't a lot out there in the way of trees and foliage. And if you did make your way through this snowfield of several mountains, it'd be like a snowplow going along, and you would be so easily detected from a helicopter, it'd be ridiculous. But they saw nothing. Now, about 4.5 miles from where he was last over 2 mountains, 4.5 air miles, some people were in an area called Booth Creek Falls. This is on April 3rd. He disappeared on March 14th. They're there, and this area had already been flown over and searched many times. These people walked up it, well, they were looking around, and they find his body laying in this frozen creek. And they call search and rescue, and the coroner goes up, takes control of the body, brings it down. He's wearing a helmet, he's wearing pants, he's wearing a shirt. He's not wearing gloves, he's not wearing a coat, and he's not wearing boots. He's missing 20 days. He's found in an area that had been searched before. The cell phone that was found in his backpack was activated by the coroner's investigator. It was found to be operable. In the report, it stated that there were many areas along the path where his cell phone would have worked. And I know because I've been there, there were several areas around that location where you could actually see Vail all the way down the mountain. So he couldn't use the phone, he did. He could use his tent, his backpack, his food. Nothing was used. When I went down, I interviewed. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Please continue.
So when we went out and interviewed the company that rented him the equipment, I asked him, I said, hey, you get this all the time. What kind of sense does it make that he would have gone off the trail and did this over 2 mountain ranges, up 1,000 feet, down 1,000 feet, up 1,200 feet? He said, like, nobody's going to do that. We can't even do that. And he says he had all that equipment. Why didn't he just hang out? You know, there was bad weather at some point during a couple days after he disappeared, and they had to call off search and rescue. That was the case. He would have whipped out his tent. He would have spent the night bundled up, nice and warm, and with food. He didn't do any of that. And I asked the guys, I said, so what's your explanation that he wasn't wearing boots? And the 3 guys in the shop looked at each other like I was talking French or something. They said, what are you talking about? He said, I said, he wasn't wearing boots. Oh, you mean when he did the autopsy? I said, no, when they found him on the mountain, they didn't find his boots on him, and they never did find him. So that's the lie. That's the truth. And they stated they had talked to the coroner, and they got all of their equipment back except the helmet. And one of the causes of death that they listed in the report was major head trauma from a fall. Now, when I look at this mountain that he supposedly went over, again, it makes no sense because the helicopter saw no tracks. So if you think about it, all these guys were essentially in or very near a major ski resort, a world-class ski resort. All disappeared alone, all males, all fell to their death. No shoes in at least 2 of the 3 cases, maybe 3 of 3. Extreme remote location. No explanation on how they arrived at the point they were found. And 2 died from explained trauma. So, I mean, those are 3 cases just that I just came up with in the last 2 years. But how strange it is that these individuals died under those circumstances.
If you look at this with your police officer's hat on as a detective, I mean, what kind of things jump out at you in terms of opportunity, you know, for this crime? I mean, they're alone, I guess. They're nobody else around, so they're vulnerable in that sense. They can be snatched up, but motive.
Well, you know, we sit around and there's other law enforcement guys that I trust a lot, and we talk about this. And one guy came up with a key point. He said, Dave, they're alone. But whatever is happening here had to have been watching and waiting for that
strike
point in time to make the snatch. And some people are going to say, oh, you know, Paulides he's out to lunch. He's claiming these people are taken. Well, these are very smart people. And you cannot logically explain how they got point to point.
Dave, let's talk about we talk about the 3 guys at the ski resorts who vanished under weird circumstances, pretty similar. You've got 3 women, similar kind of connections. Tell me about them.
So each of these women, I'll talk about the hikers because the time frames and the circumstances are really, really similar. First one is a woman that disappeared on Victoria Island in Strathcona National Park in Canada. Sylvia Apps, 69 years old. She went missing July 11th, 2014 in the Comox Valley. Super, super experienced, super good health. Left for a hike from Paradise Meadows on July 8th. She signed into a logbook and she summited Castle Craig. And she failed to arrive at a pickup point on July 13th, and that's what started the search. They found hikers who saw her just south of Castle Craig Mountain on the 11th. Now, what's interesting about this case is what they found, not what they didn't find. Searchers went in there, and in one location along a ridge line, they found her cell phone. Another location, they found her walking poles. Another location, they found her camera. And then they found her backpack. And they don't, to quote the search and rescue people, they don't know why they were in the positions they were in, but they thought that they were going to find her imminently because of the scattered property. Now, the SAR commander, search and rescue commander, a guy named Paul Berry, this is what he said. He said it has provided a roller coaster for both the family and the SAR teams. clues you think are pointing in the right direction don't pan out to give you anything. I've heard that statement many times before from other search and rescue commanders. And he says that we feel like we're getting close and then come up with nothing. It's very mystifying. He said that the lady is tough as nails, and if anyone could survive, she could. 150 searchers, canine teams, helicopters with forward-looking infrared radar. They searched until July 21st, then they gave it up. And then the search commander stated this is the first time in his career where they found all of the person's supplies and they didn't find the victim. Now, this area of Vancouver Island is beautiful, big mountains. High up on these mountains, there's no trees. It's above tree line. Weather conditions at the time were very warm, and they were concerned that she might have problems with the heat because it was unusually warm. Now, keep the profile in mind. She's a 69-year-old lady, July 11th, 2014, in Canada at a national park. Now, back up 12 days, June 18th, 2014. A woman named Karen Sykes. This is a really, really unusual case. She's a marathon runner. She's 70 years old. She was described by the Seattle Times as the guru of the trails. Nobody knew more about Mount Rainier National Park and its trail system than her. She hiked 2 times per week. She had written articles for local newspapers and magazines. She'd written a book about safety on the trails. This is the woman who knew everything about it. She was hiking with a friend. The friend got a little tired when on the trail they reached snow. She said, I'm going to stop. She said she was just going to go a little further up the trail and she'd be right back. She'd never seen a better day. We're hiking an area called Ojai Lakes Trail in the northeast corner of Rainier. The partner hiked back down the trail and eventually got a hold of rangers at 10:30 that night and a 3-day search started. Now, it was stated that she was carrying gear to spend the night overnight in an emergency if she has to. Now, don't think that's strange because anybody out there should be carrying some kind of emergency blanket or something to crawl into just in case you have to spend the night out somewhere. So she was doing everything right. Now, they started an intensive 3-day search. On the 3rd day, a helicopter found her in an area that was highly unusual. She had to climb up over the top of a 6,200-foot ridge, walk halfway down an adjacent valley in a gully of Boundary Creek. She was found walking, she had to have walked through snow, and she could have turned around and followed her path back if she had been paying attention, and of course she would have been. But in the area she was in, she was found in this gully where there was no snow. In essence, she went uphill and then went downhill. She died of hypothermia. And her friend stated she was the last person in the world that would have ever gotten lost on her. The Park Service even made a statement. This is their quote. She was found in an area that was difficult to access and not commonly traveled.
And the fact that she goes up and not down, I mean, that's over and over again. You see that all over.
Yeah. And they couldn't track her. They did track her. They found her by helicopter, just on a general grid search of the area. Now, so we have a 69-year-old disappears on July 11th. We have a 70-year-old who disappeared 12 days later on June 18th. Now, in my book that I wrote about that I got out last year, I wrote about a woman 66 years old, Geraldine Margay, disappeared on the Appalachian Trail in Maine. Her and her husband George married 32 years from Brentwood, Tennessee. Great relationship. She always wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail. Super experienced hiker in super good shape. So her husband George was going to be her support system. and they would meet at designated points along the trail, and they'd spend the night sometimes. He'd restock her with food. Exactly what a great support system should be doing. Well, her goal was to get to Mount Cattenden in Baxter Park. Total trip would have been 1,150 miles, and she'd completed 950 miles. On July 22nd, 2013, she sent George a text saying she was 8 miles from her next stop and would be arriving on time on July 23rd. The 22nd, it rained heavily on the trail to where Geraldine was located, where she would have texted me. Well, George shows up on the 23rd. She doesn't show up. Her husband calls Maine's Warden Service, and there's a TV show about Maine Warden Service law enforcement, and they actually did an entire show on this case a few months ago. And it was excellent because it showed how comprehensive the search was, how frustrated they were, and they found nothing. They didn't find her backpack, nothing. A 3-week search, and they went the distance on this one. And they described it as mystifying. The cell phone that she had either broke or was out of batteries because they pinged it. They didn't get anything. Now, all of these women were older in age. All were in outstanding physical condition. 2 of the 3 have never been found. The third one is somebody that would have been the last person in the world to disappear. She knew the trail system like you know the road to and from your nearest market. The idea that she disappeared and wasn't found is illogical.
You also had 3 cases that you discussed that maybe we would talk about tonight of women, ski resort women.
So these were not, these actually were women on a slightly different scale, but all of these cases mimic each other in a strange way. And first case involves a physician, Telika Patrick, 30 years old. She was working at the Borges Medical Center in Western Michigan University. She was a first-year psychiatric department resident. Went to a hotel trying to get a room to get some sleep. She couldn't. The hotel was full. She had her driver take her back to the medical center to get her car. She gets her car and she starts driving down I-94 near Lake Michigan. Her car, she doesn't show up at her residence and she doesn't show up the next day at work. They report her missing. Her car is found in a ditch with a flat tire on I-94 in Porter, Indiana. One mile the way the crow flies from Lake Michigan, and Burns Harbor is less than a half mile away. Now, one of the things I haven't talked about extensively, but I'm going to now, is that many of these cases involve water of some type. And I mean a river, a creek is nearby, a lake, a pond, the ocean. Now, in this case, Lake Michigan is right near less than a mile away, and there's also a large pond on the other side of the fence next to the freeway where her car was, called Lake Charles. And the FBI, this is strange, why the FBI got involved in this case is $1 million question. But they did. They say they don't get involved in these person's cases unless it's a very young person or unless there's some kind of criminality that goes along with it. But they got involved, and they and Indiana law enforcement searched this pond for 3 days. They found nothing. Her wallet, her credit cards, and her cash were all found in her car undisturbed. Now, she went missing on December 5th, 2013. Her body is found in that same pond 5 months later, on April 6th, by a fisherman. And the family demanded to know why the canines only tracked her from her car to the shoulder of the freeway and stopped, and why her body wasn't found in the pond when it was searched. Now, there's so many parts of this that fit what I've talked about already tonight. Canines can't find the body. The scent doesn't go anywhere. The body's found in a location that had been searched thoroughly by multiple agencies. And the family's asking the same questions that you and I would ask. Now, they didn't release the autopsy on this, and that was troubling to me. Because an autopsy like this is going to show the state of decomposition of the body, ocular changes to the person. Was there skin slippage? How long was that body in the water? Did she still have hair on her head after being in water for 4 months? All these kind of things are unanswered because they won't let us see the autopsy report. And then the really good question to me is, what was the interest of the FBI in this when it was classified from the very beginning as just a missing person?
Yeah, I can see if there was a kidnapping involved, they would have jurisdiction, but that's weird. Now, I don't remember there ever being a vehicular type case in any of your previous books. So you've got another one.
Correct. I wrote about this in the last book. Letitia Marie Faust, 50-year-old woman, lived in Patrick County, Virginia. A graduate of the University of North Carolina. She was a pharmaceutical sales rep. Very, very smart lady. Considered by all people to be well-read. She had a real close relationship with her mom. Her mom was elderly. On December 9, 2009, she was in her 1994 Honda Accord in Floyd County, Virginia, going to the pharmacy to pick up some supplies for her mom. After she did the shopping, she called her mom, told her she was coming home to drop the stuff off for her. She didn't return that night, and her mom called the sheriff. Huge search. Completely out of character for Letitia to do this. Her car was eventually found on the Blue Ridge Parkway on a street called Walnut Ridge Drive in Franklin County, described as a very, very remote area. I know that if I'm in law enforcement, I find that car, I'm going to be thinking she was carjacked, murdered, and dumped. Well, they played it the right way, except that they found her wallet, all the food, her purse, her money in the car, all not disturbed. And, hold on to your hats here, the searchers found her sandals she was wearing halfway between her car and a half-acre pond that was on the property where her car was found. So the sheriff gets out 4 robotic cameras and 3 separate dives into that pond. They find nothing. And this area, there's a street, this Walnut Grove, kind of extends out into the valley, almost like an overlook. When she disappeared, it was freezing rain and snow, and that hampered the search efforts for that following week. And they stated blatantly that they had no idea what happened. One of the unusual things was, and think about this thoroughly, freezing rain, kind of snowing when she disappears, yet her window is rolled down on the driver's side. And I talk in the book and I said, now what would cause you to roll down your window if you were alone? Now, if you're a female, you may not roll it down all the way if somebody walked up to the car. But if you saw something and you were trying to hear something, maybe you would roll down the window if that felt safe.
I'll tell you what, Dave, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We're going to need to take a short break. When we come back, and you have a third case that relates to the 2 you just shared with us that is pretty spooky. We'll be right back with more of our conversation with Dave Paulides. In a bit. Stay with us. Dave Paulides, sorry to interrupt you. You were pretty interesting point in the conversation about the lady who vanished and her window was rolled down. What do you make of that?
Well, I've asked a lot of people, and in trying to understand what would be my mindset for doing that with the weather being that cold. If there was any danger, meaning somebody was outside the car, I wouldn't roll down the window. But if something brought her to that location, so for me, the only thing I could think of is I would want to listen. I would want to hear that. What would be your thought?
Yeah, same kind of thing. Or somebody knew or needed help, or you got a third one for this, though, right?
There is. Well, one last thing on Letitia's case, the coroner could never determine what the cause of her death was. That's another one of those cases. But the third case involves an international case in Port Hill, New Zealand. The location where it happened is probably less than 2 miles from the ocean. May 1st, 2010, 5:45 in the morning, Emma Campbell, 29 years old. When she was working, she was on a day off. When she worked, she was a key caretaker for the disabled and the elderly. She lived with a friend in a small house in Christchurch, and her friend said she routinely took day trips into the countryside and liked and enjoyed that. And on May 1st at 5:20 a.m., she left her home in her 1994 Toyota Corona, drove to a gas station in Fort Hills, and paid $30 in cash for fuel. She left the gas station at about 5:40 a.m. and drove 2.5 miles up Dyer Pass Road to its highest point. For some reason, the car went off the right side of the road on a very slight embankment. There were no skid marks, very little damage to the car. The police responded when somebody said there was a car sitting halfway off the road. They searched for her and they couldn't find her. They called her house. Her roommate said she wasn't there. They called in big search and rescue teams, and eventually they called in the New Zealand Army to search this hillside with their canines. Interestingly, the canines, once they started their search, they walked down a small trail and they found her shoe just below the car on a path. And they also found her watch on the ground. Well, at this point, the police brought in a helicopter with FLIR, and they reported seeing deer on the hillside, but no body. And the New Zealand press called this one of the biggest mysteries that they've had in a long time. Now, the Army walked almost shoulder to shoulder down the embankment from the car and found nothing other than the shoe and the watch. Now, this happened May 1st, 2010. March 9th, 2012, over almost 2 years, 22 months later, a pig hunter was on the hillside where Emma had crashed the car, and he found her body on that hillside 100 yards from where the car was found. Now, police initially stated they couldn't confirm it was Emma, and they didn't explain why. And later, it was determined that it was her, but they never stated what they thought the cause of death was. And they didn't explain why the body wasn't found by the canines or the Army, or FLIR.
Jeez.
Emma's brother stated to the press, "It is fair to say at this time we are at a complete loss to understand what has happened."
Have there